Thanks for tuning in today. Can you believe this? Around 1.8 million households in the UK are reportedly moving towards what many are describing as a major financial turning point. This isn't being presented as a distant possibility anymore. It's being discussed as a real shift that could reshape the entire housing landscape in the coming years. Many people are said to be preparing to sell their homes before the period around May 2026. Behind this are several pressures coming together at the same time: legal reforms, rising mortgage costs, and changes in taxation, which together are increasing pressure on property owners. In this context, homes that were once seen as symbols of stability, success, and security are now being viewed by some as financial burdens. This raises a serious question. Are we witnessing a fundamental change in UK home ownership, or is this simply another cycle of pressure within the housing market? Let's break it down clearly. The changing meaning of home ownership. In the UK, a home has traditionally been far more than just a building. It has represented security, stability, and a foundation for the future. However, according to this perspective, that long-standing idea may be shifting around the 2026 period. One of the key changes often mentioned is the proposed removal of Section 21 under the Renters' Reform Agenda. Historically, Section 21 allowed landlords to regain possession of their property without giving a specific reason. With its removal, it is suggested that reclaiming property could become more legally complex, slower, and more uncertain. This is seen as reducing flexibility for landlords while increasing legal processes and administrative requirements. Growing legal and administrative pressure. Another point often raised is the growing level of regulation around property ownership. Landlords and property owners are now facing more compliance requirements, particularly around taxation and digital reporting systems. Although these changes are intended to modernize the system, some argue they may also increase pressure on individuals who are not comfortable with digital administration. As a result, property ownership is increasingly seen not just as an asset, but as an ongoing administrative responsibility. The mortgage pressure shock. One of the most significant concerns highlighted is what is often referred to as the mortgage cliff. Around 1.8 million households are reaching the end of low fixed-rate mortgage deals that were agreed during a period of historically cheap borrowing. As these deals expire, many are now moving on to significantly higher interest rates compared to what they previously paid. Even a moderate increase in rates can have a noticeable impact on monthly repayments, household budgets, savings, and overall financial stability. This adjustment is placing considerable pressure on many homeowners across the country. Inflation and global economic pressure. This situation is also linked to wider global economic conditions. Rising energy costs, fluctuations in oil prices, and ongoing geopolitical tensions are all contributing to higher inflation. In response, central banks have increased interest rates in an effort to control inflation. However, this also leads to higher borrowing costs for households. The result is a double pressure on families: higher everyday living costs combined with more expensive mortgage repayments. Pressure on the housing market. There are also concerns that in some areas, the housing market is slowing down. Property transactions are taking longer, and affordability challenges are affecting demand in certain regions. In particular, apartment owners are facing rising service charges and maintenance costs, which can significantly increase the overall cost of ownership. For some, properties are increasingly seen not just as investments, but as long-term financial commitments with ongoing costs. London and urban housing strain. London is often used as a key example in this discussion. On one side, there are high-value luxury developments, while on the other, many ordinary residents are struggling with rising living costs. Service charges, building maintenance issues, and regulatory pressures are adding further strain on apartment owners in the capital. In some areas, it is also taking longer to sell properties, which suggests reduced liquidity in parts of the market. Social housing and living conditions. The discussion also highlights challenges within social housing and temporary accommodation. Issues such as damp, leaks, and long-term maintenance delays continue to affect some housing estates. There are also concerns about families, including children, living in temporary or unstable housing conditions. This reflects wider challenges across different parts of the housing system, not just the ownership market. Long-term structural causes. Looking at the wider picture, several long-term factors are often mentioned. These include strict planning rules, green belt restrictions, housing supply shortages, the NIMBY effect, past policies such as the right to buy scheme together. These factors are believed to have contributed to a long-term imbalance between housing supply and demand. As a result, housing in many areas has become more expensive and more competitive. Rise of institutional investors. Another trend being discussed is the increasing involvement of large investment companies in the housing sector. Rather than individual ownership, some developments are now being owned and managed by institutional investors. This is leading to a shift towards long-term renting models, often referred to as build-to-rent housing. In this system, housing is increasingly treated as a service rather than traditional ownership. Wider economic and social impact rent is now taking up a significant share of average income in some areas, leaving less room for savings and financial growth. This is making it more difficult for younger generations to get onto the property ladder. Over time, this may affect social mobility and long-term financial independence. Conclusion. In summary, this analysis presents a UK housing system under pressure from multiple directions: legal, financial, and structural. It raises questions about whether traditional home ownership is changing in nature. Is owning a home still a guaranteed path to stability, or is it becoming a more complex and demanding financial responsibility in today's economy? Ultimately, the interpretation is left open for discussion. Like, comment, subscribe my channel.